Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 48. Loup Before You Sleep. Part 2. Golden Oaks Library. Seriously? Applejack frowned, staring at the other two. What? Rarity questioned, tapping her hoof lightly to Twilight's face, applying more of the greenish mixture. Ya fussed at me for trying to come inside with muddy hooves, and the first thing ya do is mix up some mud in a bowl and slap it on Chwi's face. Applejack snorted. This isn't some filthy dirty mud, this is called a mud mask. It's to refresh and rejuvenate one's complexion. Rarity chided. We're giving each other makeovers. Twilight squealed. See, it's one of the first things shown in the book. Applejack looked at the book as it was floated over to her by Twilight, frowning a little as she read what Twilight was talking about. Her friend was a little too earnest about this sort of thing, and it worried her. She knew Twilight had some issues thanks to what she had picked up from Spike and her own observations, but she wasn't sure what they stemmed from nor how many problems she might have. It was hinted to her that Twilight didn't exactly have a normal full hood, course neither had Applejack really, for entirely different reasons. Then there was Rarity. Applejack didn't want to deal with her at all. The white mare was getting into this a little too much, of course. All this frou-frou stuff seemed right up her alley. Applejack wanted to head home, but the storm was getting worse and she was worried about how Twilight might take her leaving, so she opted to stay for now. Honestly, she just hoped she could keep from throttling Rarity the whole night. Splat! Applejack winced as something splattered to her face. She frowned as some pony started rubbing the herbal-smelling stuff in. She opened her eyes to glare at the mud-covered white hoof patting her face a moment before a pair of cucumber slices were slapped over her eyes. What? It's to reduce puffiness around the eyes. Rarity commented. Sleep does that too, and better than produce. Applejack protested. The mare paused, taking the cucumbers off her eyes and eating them. Good chow though. This is exciting, we're doing everything by the book. Twilight smiled, looking over the book in question. And that will make sure our slumber party is perfect. Applejack glanced to Rarity a bit nervously. Did you hear that, Applejack? Rarity deadpanned. You certainly would not want to do anything to ruin Twilight's first slumber party, would you? Applejack rolled her eyes, returning the look Rarity was giving her. Funny, was gonna say the same to you. So we have an agreement? Rarity questioned. I reckon we do. Applejack nodded, spitting on her hoof and holding it out to seal the deal, only for Rarity to recoil. Ugh, there's messy, then there's just plain rude. The white unicorn scoffed, looking at the spit-covered hoof as Applejack frowned. Well, there's fussy and just plain getting on my nerves. Applejack muttered back as the two started to devolve into an insult-laden whisper fest again as Twilight read on, oblivious to the pair's animosity. Asterisk. Canterlet. Seriously, Fuzzy? That song again? Trixie scoffed, nursing her drink as she cooled down from her time on stage. I'm pretty sure you sang that last time we came here 4 years ago too. He always sings that. Spike rolled his eyes. Woof. Ross growled. I don't care if you like it, you always sing it. Spike protested. He is right. How can you call yourself a proper thespian if you typecast yourself into a role like this? Trixie smirked as Ross frowned. Seriously, stop being a hack and sing something else. Let's hear something different out of you for a change. Ross snorted and rose from his seat with a flip of his tattered long coat as he strode towards the stage. Might have gone too far there, Trixie. Spike added. He hates the idea he's typecast as a monster all the time like that. He'll be better for the change. Not like he can do much aside from sing something badly. Trixie shrugged as she watched Ross pointing out the song he wanted to the pony in charge of the music. You'd be surprised. Spike answered. So are you actually gonna make a move on him, or just flirt all night, 'cause he's really blind about that sort of thing? Trixie blinked, looking at the little dragon who was calmly sipping on his drink. Trixie has no idea what you are talking about. And the third pony speech gave it away. What? I've got a neurotic older sister, an easily excitable older brother and another older brother who doesn't have it together as much as he thinks he does. I'm used to catching on to stuff quick to stop it from getting worse. I'm the sane one of the family. Spike explained. Given how you are around Ross and from what I've been told about you having been in Celestia's school, I've picked up on a few of your little quirks in the last few weeks. Trixie frowned as the little dragon spoke. Ross had mentioned his brother was sharp, but this was more than she expected. So is this the part where you tell Trixie to step off as he doesn't need another broken mare in his life? Trixie expected a number of responses, the little dragon laughing was not one of them. Pft, of course not. Every mare I've ever met since I could remember is nuts. The trick I think is to find a mare who's crazy you can work with. Spike laughed. Besides, I'm just pointing out that Ross is too dense to notice subtle. If you're gonna get his attention, it probably needs to be a big showy deal. Seriously, dude needs a girlfriend. Trixie blinked and smiled a little. Well, that's good to know. That said, if this is some sort of power grab or bragging thing and you break his heart, well, I might be a dragon, but I'm just gonna let Twilight deal with you. Spike said as if it was a polite conversation, not a threat. She's got journals full of revenge plots she wrote as a foal that she keeps adding to and refining. She needs a stallion something fierce too. Or a clean white coat that allows her to hug herself. Spike blinked as Trixie seemed unfazed by this. A small smile crossed his lips. Either she underestimated Twilight, or wasn't planning on hurting Ross. Granted, she was staring at the stage with a goofy smile on her face, so he expected it was the latter. Spike questioned. He dedicated the song to me. Trixie practically gushed. Spike blinked, maybe this would be easier than he thought. He looked on stage wondering if Ross had any feelings for Trixie and if his stupid excuse about a pony's scent really meant anything. He only thought this until the first few notes of the song came on, at which point he fell off his chair laughing. The rest of the audience, hearing the start of the song, joined in the singing as well almost instantly. Princess was a very famous band after all. Asterisk. Golden Oaks. Twilight tilted her head a little as she looked up from her book, listening to her friends go into some rather specific ghost stories. If she didn't know better, she would think they were talking about one another. But that was silly, they were friends, right? The elements wouldn't have worked if they were not. Maybe something had happened between the pair of them to make them cross with each other? Or maybe these were very specific location ghost stories and she was reading too much into it. Well, time to take matters into her own hooves and get a proper ghost story off. Or at least something scary. Twilight's horn glowed, cutting out all the lights in the library. Applejack and Rarity both cried out as Twilight popped up between them, shining a flashlight at her chin. I've got one. The story is called, The Legend of the Headless Horse. Twilight began with a grin. Asterisk. Canterlet. Trixie was bright red in the face as Ross plopped down into this chair across the table from her. The applause he had gotten for his song was much larger than hers, and the dedication still stung too. For your information, Fuzzy, Trixie's bottom is not fat, the blue unicorn snorted as Ross simply grinned. Spike had yet to get back up off the floor from where he had fallen over laughing and was trying to contain his flaming hiccups with his claws. Asterisk. Golden Oaks. And then, just when the last one thought she was safe, there standing behind her, inches away, was the Headless Horse. Twilight screamed out, flinging a blanket over her head and waving her forelegs in the air, making both of the others scream out, flailing and clutching each other in terror. Twilight smirked, turning the lights back on, making both of the mares leap away from each other once they figured out who they were hugging. Twilight grinned wide, darting over to the book and a checklist she made. Ghost story, check. She turned back to Rarity and Applejack, glaring at each other with mild annoyance. Now who wants s'mores? Twilight asked with a giggle. Asterisk. Canterlet. Trixie was still glaring at Ross when Spike went up to perform his song. The navy-furred moondog didn't seem bothered by the glare in the slightest. So after a few moments Trixie simply gave up on it and sat back thinking about what Spike had said. For her plan to work she needed to outpower his sister and show blatantly that she was infatuated with him. A small part of her mind told her to simply say it, to simply tell him how she felt and be done with it, for good or ill, and she could progress from there. The larger part of her mind told her that doing so was far too dull and not dramatic enough to catch his attention, let alone convey her actual feelings in the matter. Talk was cheap and often meaningless. She needed more than that. She needed big and showy, she needed to make a production out of the whole thing. The opening strains of Spike's song caught her attention and she looked to the stage as Spike started to sing. She didn't recognize the song right off, but it sounded like that Griffin band, Aerosmith or something. Backstroke lova always hidin' neath th cover. Till I talked to my daddy, he say. He said you ain't seen noting. Till you're down on a muffin. Then you're sure to be a change in your ways. Spike belted out. Ross and Trixie both stared at the small dragon on stage before hoof and paw impacted their respective faces. He's 12, was soon bellowed at the stage hoof. Asterisk. Golden Oaks Library. Twilight was not 100% sure she liked where this was going. Moris had been tasty if a messy check off her list. Though currently Twilight thought that Rarity and Applejack didn't seem to have a grasp on how truth or dare was supposed to work. They had started by insulting each other. Again, then moved on to rather mean dares. Rarity was soaked and shivering and clearly pissed off. Applejack was dressed up like a storybook princess. Twilight wasn't even sure where the dress had come from. Was that thing in the hall closet? She needed to have a word with her brothers when they got back. As dares started getting more and more vicious, Twilight decided that perhaps the game should end before some pony was dared to jump off a bridge or something. I think perhaps we should check off truth or dare and move on. Twilight offered, looking in the book. Pillow fight? What's that? Asterisk. In another story altogether. The tall red earth pony stallion's ears suddenly stuck straight up as he surged to his hooves. His blue eyes scanned the woods where he and the others were camped out, eyes narrowed as his tail lashed. A grey unicorn with an amber mane looked up from where he was keeping watch over the camp. He moved carefully to stand as not to disturb the small blue dragon ling on his back. He looked around the camp curiously as his friend leapt to his hooves, trying to find the problem. What is it, Red? Is something wrong? Gerard asked, his horn glowing, unfastening the catch of his double-sided blade that hung from his side. I'll say something's wrong, G. Somewhere out there a group of hot mares are having a sexy pillow fight. And I'm not around to watch. Red stated flatly. Another of the figures in the small campsite rose to her hooves and belted the tall red stallion in the back of the head with a hoof. The zebra mare snorted in annoyance, glaring at the red stallion as a grey Pegasus half hidden in her sleeping bag spoke up. Thanks for that, Velcorn, the idiot was out of my reach. Starfall growled. What the buck does a sexy pillow fight even entail? The small blue dragon on the back of the unicorn asked. Asterisk. Golden Oaks Library. Pillow fight. Rarity scoffed. I shall not engage in something so barbaric. Her voice trailed off as a pillow belted her across the face. Ooh-ho-ha, it is on. The white mare growled. Rarity belted the pillow back across the room, smashing it into Applejack's face. The orange mare in turn bucked a few more pillows into Rarity, knocking her backwards. Several more pillows were magically flung from Rarity's side of the room, impacting Applejack. Twilight popped up in the middle, understanding it finally as she looked at the book. Oh, pillow fight. Okay, I get it now. Well, I get it, but I don't get it. Why is this a thing? Oof. The purple mare was soon buried under a number of pillows that had been flung wild. Maybe we should take it down a notch. Twilight called out from where she was buried. Ah, well, if she will. Applejack stated, ducking behind a wall of pillows. You first. Rarity counted, dodging some kicked projectiles. Right, plan B it is then. Twilight muttered, her magic grabbing the collected pillows that had buried her and flung them all wild. The enchanted feather-filled bundles soared away from her until the spell took hold and they turned midair, homing in on Applejack and Rarity, pelting them and burying both of them under a mound of pillow impacts. Ow! Applejack muttered under the pile of purple pony-pushed plush projectiles. Where did that come from? Rarity twitched under another pile. Keep in mind I do have two brothers who I fight with every so often. Twilight smiled. No offense to the skills you two display, but Spike and Ross are much more devious and over the top in our fights. The purple mare might have gone on if she wasn't suddenly belted from both sides by another pair of pillows launched by her friends. Asterisk. Canterlet. I can't believe they let you sing that. Trixie snorted. What? Spike protested. There's nothing really to that song really. It's just about a guy being told how to walk. It's an awesome song. Ross chuckled as Trixie rolled her eyes. The innocence of youth. Trixie muttered. What? Spike demanded. Nothing. Trixie stated looking up at the back entrance of the Royal Canterlet Theatre. Are you sure you two will be all right? It's gotten late. We'll be fine. We want to see Princess Luna anyway. Sooner or later she's going to tell us what's going on with Ross here. Spike offered. She'll let us crash in a guest room if we ask, I bet. Bark. Ross offered. Yeah, good point. Worst case we take the red eye back to Ponyville. Spike shrugged. Trixie blinked. Don't your parents live here? Both Spike and Ross frowned and Ross growled a little. Yeah, you could say that, though we don't really deal with them if we can help it. I don't have any problems with them, but Ross and Twilight prefer not to have anything to do with either of them. A lot of Twilight's issues stem from things they did. They're not bad ponies, mind you, they just didn't know how to deal with the three of us, I think. Ross shrugged at that, offering Trixie a bow before turning to head off towards the palace. See ya, Trixie. Don't forget what I said. Spike winked at her before trundling off after his brother. Trixie watched them go as she opened the door behind her, listening to the pair bicker as they walked off. So what's so bad about going down on a muffin? Derpy does that all the time. Spike questioned. Asterisk. Golden Oaks. Twilight pulled her pillow over her head, trying to drown out the hushed angry whispers that were steadily getting louder as the night went on. Perhaps she shouldn't have had them share a bed, though she doubted Ross and Spike would be too thrilled if their beds were used. She had gotten a spare bed out of downstairs storage. It paid to have a backup when you have a fire breather and a chronic chewer in your family. She thought this while completely ignoring the fact she had vaporized her last bed. Still, that was neither here nor there as her friends were fighting again, and Twilight had had it. Enough! Twilight shouted, sitting up and cutting the lights on in her room with a spell. Grabbing the book with a hoof, she held it open to the first page, shoving it in Rarity's and Applejack's faces. The pair were fighting over a blanket of all things, ignoring the fact that there were three more of them folded up on the end table next to the bed. The number one rule in a slumber party is to have fun. Twilight fussed. And thanks to you two I can't check that off. I've got an incomplete checklist. Do you have any idea how bothered I am by that? Checklists are made for checking things off, and I can't check that off, because clearly you're not having any fun. Applejack and Rarity both winced as Twilight dropped back down onto her bed with an annoyed growl. I've been trying to get along. Applejack protested. No, it was I who have been trying to get along. Rarity countered before the two started to go at it again. Twilight growled, sitting up again in anger. Okay, I seriously hope you two are happy, because there is no way I'm going to be doing something like this again. I've been trying to open up to be more relaxed and more open to trying new things. I actually was looking forward to this opportunity for a slumber party when it presented itself, despite having to hide my terror at just saying the word party. Twilight stood up on her bed, looking down at the pair of them. I could have tried this in Canterlot with my school friends, but I chose to stay the safe route because I was afraid if something went wrong that I wouldn't want to ever do anything new ever again. Twilight ranted. And thanks to you two I was proven right. This is a mistake and I should just give up and lock myself in a tower somewhere and avoid all contact with anything. This was my first slumber party, my first attempt to do something with friends that wasn't the result of a manic god attacking, a supreme bout of stubbornness, a Ursa attack, or a lazy dragon. Congratulations, I now have yet another party I want nothing to do with. Twilight tossed the book over her shoulder, hopping off the bed and storming out of the room with a growl, making sure to slam the door behind her as she left. That lasted about 3 seconds before the door was flung back open. Twilight stormed back in, grabbed Applejack and Rarity in her magic along with the extra bed and flung all of them out of her room before slamming the door shut again with her on the inside. Perhaps we went a bit too far. Rarity conceded from her new position half under the bed. Ya think? Applejack muttered from where she was plastered to the wall of the hallway. Author's note. Interestingly enough, this was a hard chapter to write. T-Gap Twilight is still somewhat naive, but she's not as bad as Canon Chui. She is however a lot angrier. All in all, I'm not thrilled with how this chapter is turning out. That usually means everyone else will love it. End author's note. End chapter 48. Loup Before You Sleep. Part 2.